This video is part of a full podcast, link in the description for the full podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Enjoy the video. We are back to talk about Spurs transfer targets. Now I've got 15 transfer targets on the screen, as I'm sure you can all see. If you're watching this as a video, you can actually see the transfer targets on your screen. If you're watching this, well, if you're listening to this on the podcast, wait until the video comes out on Monday and you'll be able to watch me put them all into the tiers. Right, let's start off with goalkeepers. We've got 5 tiers for this. We've got the top one being sign him up. Quite self-explanatory. Get him into the club now. Quality addition, he'd be okay, just not needed. And then stay away. Stay away category is, I could liken that to, who's been a truly shambolic Spurs signing? Ndombele. 70 million was it for a player who's being loaned out to Roma? Yeah. Alright, stay away and Ndombele. I'm not going to rename it, but we'll go with that. Alright, we'll start with goalkeepers. Now, which goalkeeper should we start with? Let's start with Unai Simon. Are you going to put Unai Simon?
Yeah, Simon is a decent option. I mean, he's been in La Liga for I think some time now. He plays for Spain and in the national team. I think he would go for me in the would be okay tier. He's a half decent keeper, but I don't think he's one of those keepers that you're confident with at the back.
Alright, fair enough. So Simon straight into he'd be okay. We'll move on to the next goalkeeper now, and someone that's impressed a lot of people recently. In Porto's number 1, Diogo Costa.
Yeah, again, as you mentioned, he's sort of recently picked up, and a lot of people have seen him and thought, wow, okay, maybe this guy is the real deal. He's looked like a decent keeper from what I've seen of him. I can't say I've seen absolute tons of him, but from what I've seen, I'd put him in probably quality addition. Okay, fair enough. He'd be a very young guy to get in as well, so could possibly give you the option of understudying Luis for a year or two. Yeah. Would he be up? I don't know. He'd be a very good option, and I agree with that one. Next, we've got one of 2 goalkeepers I've got on here from the Prem, Illan Meslier. Meslier for me, he's going straight into sign them up. I think I think he's the youngest out of the lot. Actually, I think he has a lot of potential as well. Being French, and you mentioned being an understudy to Lloris, I think he would probably be our best bet. Obviously, he hasn't got the greatest lead side in front of him, hence he concedes a few and doesn't keep a lot of clean sheets. But I think out of the options, he's one of the top ones. So sign him up for me. Fair
enough, mate. And then we'll move on to the final goalkeeper I've here in Robert Sanchez of Brighton.
Again, similar to a few of the others, he's one of those keepers that does his job well. He's a decent keeper. I think over the last season or so for Brighton, he's definitely become a lot better for them. He's one of those players I'm not sure would... I just couldn't see Spurs fans linking with him, maybe. Okay. So for that reason, I'd probably just put would be okay.
Would be okay, okay. So goalkeeper-wise, then we're getting Meslier in, are we, for the summer?
Yeah, 100%.
Alright, fair enough. And you said you wanted to touch on Lloris. Would that be to overtake Lloris? What would be going on with Lloris there?
I think for Lloris, maybe pin him down with another year on his contract, and then over the probably next season, say we signed him in the summer, just working with him, just learning what he does, how he does it, give him that experience of a World Cup winner, a World Cup winning captain. Just to be able to communicate with him, and then maybe gradually over the season phase Meisler into the first 11.
Okay, fair enough. So bring him in, and then sort of transition from Lloris into Meslier before Meslier is that first choice keeper. Fair enough. We'll move on to centre backs now, and again we've got 4 centre back options. We'll start with one that you were heavily linked with over the summer. Another centre back that would come from Italy, from the Serie A, and it's Bastoni.
Yeah, Bastoni probably was the most linked player to us that we didn't actually sign in the transfer window. I think every other day there was a piece of information coming out about him, whether that be coming to us or not. In my opinion, he's a sign me up. He's a top tier centre back. He fits that Italy criteria that Paratici loves and breathes. He's also quite young as well, so he's got a lot of potential, which fits the Spurs transfer system. We like to sign those sort of young, upcoming players. I think Perisic was probably one of the only ones that doesn't go into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, he's a sign me up, definitely.
I mean, yeah, just touching on that, I don't think there's anyone on this list that's sort of older than 26, 27, which again proves to that, young sort of targets. All right, we'll move on to another left-footed player now, and Evan Ndika.
Yeah, he's a strange one, Ndika. He's very briefly mentioned during the summer. I think there was one or two people that sort of came out and said we were interested in, but nothing came of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's a decent player, but I'm just not 100% sure he'd be the right fit for us and the level that we need him. So for me, I think it would just be not needed. Not needed,
okay. One thing with Ndika that is worth mentioning is his contract is up this summer. So could possibly be a free transfer there if he was someone you were to look at. And I'll ask this question. I was going to save it to the end of the centre backs, but I'll ask you it now. Do you only need one centre back, or do you need two?
I do think we need two. I think that Lenglet's only come on a loan deal. I don't believe there's an option in there, so he could just be going straight back at the end of the season. Ben Davies, he's a decent player, but he never gives you great games. Davinson Sanchez, I always refer to him the centre-back Serge Aurier. He's one of those that could have a good game, but then the next game get a red card and make some stupid challenges. So I think we do need two.
You do need two. So you've said that Ndika's not needed. Being that free transfer and possibly coming in as a backup, would that change your mind? I'll keep him in not needed, but would that possibly change your mind as a transfer to Spurs?
Knowing he'd be on a free transfer, possibly. Again, that fits the Spurs agenda of signing cheap players for getting good deals and stuff. So if he came in as a backup, I wouldn't be too disappointed with it.
Okay, fair enough. We'll move on to the next one now in Edmund Tapsoba.
Yeah, another sort of Bundesliga centre back. His name was reported the odd time. I think a bit more than Ndika actually. But again, I'm just not sure how much he'd cope with the Premier League and how well he would do. He's a good physical defender, but I'm not sure his game would suit our style of system. So for me, it'd probably be, again, just not needed. Okay,
fair enough. And then for the final centre-back, we've got another guy that you were heavily linked with in this summer, Pau Torres.
Yeah, similar to Bastoni, he's a top-tier centre-back. I think we were going to go for him a year or two back before this summer window, and it didn't end up happening. But for me, it'd be straight to sign him up, as you mentioned, with us probably needing two centre-backs if we're being realistic. I think he's definitely a great option.
Okay, fair enough. We'll move on to the right-backs now, because I've got two right-backs here. Obviously, I know you've got three, but none of them are good. Well, two of them aren't good enough. We don't know about Spence. we've got no clue. He could be great, as my iPad falls. He could be great, or he could be the worst man known to mankind because he's played about 6 minutes. So who knows? We are looking at right backs anyway. We'll start with one who has impressed an awful lot of people. Ever since he's moved from Celtic to Leverkusen. It's Jeremy Frimpong.
Yeah, Jeremy Frimpong, I think, is a class player. He did well at Celtic, then got his move to Leverkusen. I think he suits more that right wing back role. He's got that good pace, good energy. I would be more than happy to see him brought into the club, but only if one of the likes of Emerson Doherty were to leave. And he's had a great start to the season, so if we're basing it off current form, I'd say a quality addition to the side.
Okay, fair enough. And then we'll look at the other right back I've got down here, Pedro Porro.
Yeah, I think he's a decent player in the Portuguese league. I believe he used to play for Man City.
He did, yeah.
Back in a few years ago. So one of those players that you think, did Man City let him go for a reason? Was he not just cutting it, or are we saying that you look at Man City when you've got fullbacks like João Cancelo and Kyle Walker, is he ever going to get ahead of them? Probably not. So for me, I think he'd go into would be okay, because we didn't really see too much of him at a Premier League level, if anything. But he could be a good addition for us, but I'd still say would be okay.
Okay, fair enough. We've got 5 attackers now, so I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on all of these. We'll start with one of the two Roma men on here, Zaniolo.
Zaniolo, yeah, heavily linked player. A great attacking midfielder when he gets it right. The only concern with him, and I think most Spurs fans would echo this, or any fan really, his injury record is atrocious. I mean, he's picked up quite a few injuries, a lot of ACLs, which obviously he can't help, but as a club, if you're looking at it from a financial perspective, are you going to invest 30 to 40 million pounds in a player that might not play for a whole year at some point? I'm not sure if you will, but if we're going in terms of quality, for me it would be a quality addition, because I do think he's a good player despite his injuries.
Okay, so you've put him in quality addition. Does that mean you would still stay away from him even though you think he's a good player?
I would take him. I would take him at Spurs, but as I say, it'd have to be for the right price if we're taking his injury record into consideration. Okay,
fair enough. We'll move on to Dani Olmo now.
Yeah, Olmo's one of those players that Spurs probably need as an attacking midfielder, but I just think someone with a bigger stature than him would be better. I think he's not the biggest of people. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure if he'd suit the physicality of the Premier League. And he's one of those players that's played well for Leipzig, but I'm just not 100% sure he'd make it. So for me, it's just not needed.
Just not needed. Okay, fair enough. Let's go for the best attacking midfielder in the Premier League. That best attacking midfielder in the world now, James Maddison.
Maddison, I think, as a Spurs fan, exactly where I'm going to put him. He's going straight into sign them up. He's a player that Spurs fans, especially during the window, we were heavily linked with, and we wanted him bad. We were screaming out for him at some point. I'm sure you'd agree. He's had a great start to the season. He scored against us as well with a pretty good goal, I have to admit. Good finish. And with Leicester's poor form this year, he may push for a move, I'm not sure. Which could make our lives a little bit easier, because if we tempt him with a nice contract and some Champions League football, I can't imagine he'll want to be a Leicester player too much longer.
No, I'm very clued up on the Maddison situation, and he loves the club. He's genuinely been in pain at times this season through how badly we've been doing, and as a fan I want to see that. He was heavily linked with a move to both you and Newcastle in the summer, and apparently Newcastle are interested again in January, as I'm sure you are. 18 months left in his contract now, I do believe, and I think he will be going, at which point then I will book my train to Luton. Yeremy Pino.
Yeah, Pino's one of those young players that is sort of coming up through the ranks, I think, now, and he looks good, but he suits that sort of young player criteria that we look for at Tottenham, but again, he is quite young, so I'm not sure how well he'd suit the side. I think it would be another situation with Udogie, for example, where he'd come in and just be loaned straight back out to either the club we brought him from, or another club in the Premier League or La Liga or something like that. If we're going off the basis that he'd be loaned straight back out, for me, it would be okay, because it'd probably take a good 2 to 3 seasons for him to be actually integrated into the first team side.
Okay, fair enough. And then the last one we've got, Lorenzo Pellegrini.
Pellegrini, is a great player. I think he's doing quite well for Roma at the moment. He's a free kick master as well, which we seem to lack at Spurs, similar with James Maddison actually. We just do not have a free kick taker, so even if we brought someone to do that, I'd be quite happy. My only concern with him would be that Jose just wouldn't sell him to us. Jose, I think, left on quite bad terms, obviously being sacked a week before a cup final. So he'd either make a move very difficult or try to price us out of a move, essentially. So, but again, if we're going off quality, I'd say it would be a quality addition, because he's still a very good player. Okay, fair enough. Before we do round off this, we need someone in stay away. We've got 3 guys in the just not needed section. We've got Ndika, Tapsoba and Olmo. Can you give me one of these to go and stay away? I would go for probably Tapsoba if I was to put anyone in there. I just think he wouldn't fit that Tottenham role. Fair enough. And then
I want to get your rankings actually of the sort of positions of the order you'd go for them. Obviously, goalkeepers, you've got Meslier first, and you've got Costa second. Out of Simon or Sanchez, which one would you kind of prefer?
100% Sanchez in that point, because he Premier League experience, and he does look good this season. Okay,
fair enough. Centre backs wise, you've got Bastoni and Torres. Which one of them would you prioritise?
Bastoni, mainly because he worked with Conte before at Inter. He's probably Paratici's number one target as well, being that Italian links. And I just feel he's got that potential in him to become a top player.
Fair enough. And then obviously you've got Ndika and Tapsoba. Right backs, have already clarified that. We've got Frimpong and then Porro. And then attacking midfielder / winger wise, I've just kind of grouped these all together. Maddison being the top target. Which one would you pick out of Zaniolo and Pellegrini?
I probably would go with Pellegrini. If we are going off injuries, as I say, Zaniolo is just such a big risk. While he is a great player, the risk is always there, and sometimes you just can't get past that. So I think Pellegrini will probably be the one I'd take. Okay, fair enough. And then we've obviously got Pino and Olmo. That is the end of the tier list